afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to Unlock the Door Radio, where our motto is question authority at every turn. And no, that didn't come from Lenin or Stalin. I mean, they were the epitome of authority, authoritarianism. It comes from Benjamin Franklin, who said it was the duty of every patriot to question authority, to ask probing questions, and not just accept everything for what it was. Now, tonight I'm joined with my co-host, Jasmine. Tonight, what I thought we could do is, now that we're kind of coming into summer and people usually relax, watch some movies, a lot of times old movies, trying to figure out what maybe to have the kids watch. And in this case, I would say teenagers, obviously. I thought that what we could do is deal with the idea of the top, what I consider the top 10 dystopian movies that you haven't seen already, you should see. If your kids haven't seen it, they should. And maybe we'll even watch some of these movies again, just to refresh your mind as to this particular art form and what may be entailed in it. Now, one of the movies I'm going to deal with is RoboCop. Now, I've not seen the new one. You've seen the new one, right, Jasmine?
Yeah, I saw it.
Did you like it?
I thought it was going to be better, actually. But it's okay.
Okay. And, of course, I've seen the old one back in the 1980s. And the thing is, though, that, we'll bring up this movie and talk about some of the maybe prophetic portions of it. But the thing I was caught by when the movie was first released was Gary Oldman came out and said that it was not necessarily just a fantasy kind of movie. This was talking about what's happening in the world today. And let's see, Jasmine, is it true that in the movie that it's like in the original movie, one guy's brain and a little bit in his spinal column and some other parts get placed into a robot's body, but pretty much it's him versus some bad guys in the first movie. Later you get a robot in the second movie. But in the first movie, it's just him, and he's kind of a unique situation. Is it true that in this new release of RoboCop, it's like there's robots, actually?
Well, he gets blown up, and parts of him are destroyed. So it's just basically, well, his head and one of his arms that work.
Mm-hmm. But there's other police, quote, men who are not part human.
No, in this one it was just him.
Okay, so there's no other entities that are used for police work?
Well, there are these like huge robot thingies that roam around in war areas, but they're controlled by regular people.
Okay,
but he's like the only one who is actually part robot.
Okay, so he's a cyborg in this plot, but then there's other robots, but they're kind of controlled by other people.
Yeah.
Kind of like today's drones.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay, and that's what I was kind of getting into here with this whole thing. We're going to deal with 10. We're going to deal with 10 movies that I think may actually be, well, prophetic in the sense that, well, they're not just entertainment. They're warnings about the future and, how far we're willing to go with it. So instead of actually starting with RoboCop, we're going to come back to RoboCop, okay? What I'd like to do is we're going to deal with 10 movies, and I'm going to name them. Clockwork Orange, 1984, Blade Runner, They Live, Matrix, Hunger Games, RoboCop, Idiocracy, Equilibrium, and everyone's favorite for dinner time, Soylent Green. So, anyway, which one would you like to start with, Jasmine?
Go with Clockwork Orange.
Okay. Okay, Clockwork Orange is interesting. I think it's one of the best films, for instance, if you showed it in a psychology class, to deal with behaviorism. When you first saw it, did it just kind of strike you as a lot of mindless violence, though? Or did you know that there was like this thing about an attack on behaviorism?
Well, I just thought it was really, really weird.
Okay, why?
That's all. Um, I don't quite remember the beginning because I didn't like the beginning. It was just weird from the beginning. But then, yeah, there's a lot of violence, a lot of blood, what I can remember, and a lot of sex too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And that's
originally
all really I remember.
from the movie at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they go into well. First of all, before I go into the whole treatment that they do to Alex, the bad guy, they pretty much do a really good job establishing that Alex is a very nasty young man.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, he goes out, he beats people up, he rapes them, he
Yeah, for
steals,
fun.
beats up homeless guys. Just kind of not the kind of guy that's going to get any merit badge from Boy Scouts. And eventually he murders a crazy cat lady, and winds up in jail for a very long time. Now, you remember the part where he gets put through the behavioral modification program?
Sort of.
Okay, where he has to watch all of the really nasty scenes of violence and depravity on the screen.
Oh yeah. They tried to like turn him.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So it's aversion therapy. Their goal is to make him into somebody who is, if he sees violence or he feels like attacking a woman, he throws up. That's called aversion therapy. And basically, it kind of renders him weak. Hey, by the way, do you remember in the movie what the people that eventually come along and beat him up out in the woods and practically drown him? Who do you remember who they were?
no.
You don't? Oh my
No, I
gosh.
don't. It was such a long time ago, and it
Okay.
wasn't really a movie that stuck.
Okay. Well, again, it is a movie from. I'll have to say this. In fairness to you here, when I was in college, I was required to read the book for a political psychology class, and I read the book, and I decided to check the movie out, and I watched about 15 minutes, and I turned it off. In those days, it was a VHS tape. I turned it off and returned the movie. I did not really like it that much. It was later that I decided, you know what? It was on a movie station or something. I decided to watch it. And then what intrigued me was this, again, the psychology. It was pretty deep. And I looked up, and what they tried to do with the movie was to question the whole concept of behaviorism and taking people's their free thought away. And, eventually what you see is this guy, it's totally weakened. He's left at the mercy of the bad guys and the state, and the state's manipulating him. And there's one part, Kubrick does this with all of his movies. Whether it is Dr. Strangelove, if you understand what he was trying to say there, 2001: Space Odyssey, and of course on the internet now a lot of conspiracy stuff talks about what's the name of that movie? Eyes Wide Shut. There's always something hidden that he's trying to get out. And in Clockwork Orange, to me at least, even though it's first of all, I wouldn't necessarily let anyone. I wouldn't suggest anyone under 17 really watch it. But he's trying to get a point across that in one particular instance, when the Prime Minister of England or the Deputy Prime Minister is touring the prison, he says we need to make room for political prisoners. We need to find a way to cure the violent offenders so we can replace them with political offenders. I don't know if you remember that part.
I remember him, but I don't remember the speech.
Okay, that's fine. We'll get to some stuff that's more recent in a few minutes. The thing is that I think Kubrick was trying to warn people that behaviorism ultimately dehumanizes. And you're left with this idea of, well, if you take away people's moral agency, are they even people anymore? But the relationship he has to the state, it's Alex's old friends who used to go out and help him kill, rape, beat up people, who become the policemen. He's trying to say that the state is actually just like the gangs. And they recruit from the gangs in order to keep control of the population, of the society. And in that way, you could watch this movie and think, oh my gosh, this is just about, violence and perversion. And that's why it was actually banned in England for a long time. And then later it was given an X rating, which meant that, pretty much like NC-17 today. And eventually now it's, because ratings have changed, it's more considered an R movie. But it's a warning about the future, ultimately. And if you haven't seen it, just be prepared. It's pretty graphic, but at the same time, if you understand it, you're trying to attack this whole idea that was presented by B.F. Skinner that authoritarians love. Authoritarians love B.F. Skinner because B.F. Skinner says, hey, people are just moldable. You can make people that like their environment rather than making environments that people like. So, what do you think? Would you ever watch that movie again, Jasmine?
I might have to understand it properly.
Oh, don't feel forced to. Which movie would you like to do next? And something that you could really kind of jump into. I took over that one.
Well, how about Hunger Games?
Okay. What do you think the message is in Hunger Games?
Stand up.
Okay.
Really?
Talk to me.
Well, you're talking about the first part where everything starts, where everything is in districts, and yearly two people get chosen to fight in like different arenas.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody dares to stand up to the authority because, according to the people, there's no chaos, there's no war, there's nothing. And to keep that, they have to keep these games going.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that's just for the authority to like enjoy people's misery and to just have some really weird fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very entertaining. And it's quite fascinating how they just randomly pick out two people. It doesn't matter really if it's two girls or two guys or if they're under 10 or whatever the age limit was. But it sort of makes it fair when they fight, because not all are the same age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you take the innocent of society. I mean, it's not like these are maybe people that volunteer. Like many of the gladiators in Roman era were actually people that wanted to be gladiators, men and women. A lot of people don't know that. Well, a lot of upper class women paid so that they could take part in a fight. Most of them, of course, exhibition games.
Yeah, but didn't that gave them like perks, right?
Mm-hmm. But usually it was like something simple, like you didn't want to have a girl that's a daughter of a rich senator or something get killed in the game, so you might put her up against a midget. And that was pretty popular in the Roman era, the young woman versus a midget. Yeah, well, that got the ratings up in those days. I mean, that was ratings.
And they still would today, too.
I think they would. I seriously think that they would, because people are, well, in this one, first of all, I want to go back to what you originally said, the idea that we have peace. and we have security. It just means we have to sacrifice a few things. Yeah, a couple kids a year. I mean, not that much. I mean, you see that nowadays. A lot of people say, well, we can give up our freedoms. Why not? I mean, you see that nowadays, don't you? I mean, even in Europe, people are like, well, maybe it's okay for us to be spied on or something.
They wanted to do that in Sweden too, but nobody wanted that.
Yeah, in America, they're starting to kind of get into this, especially in bigger cities. But Americans tend to not like the idea of being watched all the time. But then again, you're aware of the fact that if you get out of the shower and you don't get dressed and you sit in front of your computer, NSA could be watching you.
Okay, well, now I do know that. And I've actually never done that, but now I'm sure not to ever do that.
Anyway, I was talking to a guy that he's just like a little amateur hacker. He offered to show me how to do it, and I was like, no, I don't want to know how to do this. But he said he can hack into he's just a college student. He said he could hack into anyone's computer, no problem, and he could watch what they're doing at any given time. And NSA and CIA and all these guys, they have the ability to do it too. In fact, they can take a picture when your cell phone. Edward Snowden pointed this out recently in that interview that he did. I don't know if they actually played that on the full interview. I don't know. I heard there were some things they left out on the televised broadcast. But the thing is that a spy agency can actually turn on your cell phone and film you when your cell phone is turned off. They don't turn the phone on. It's just the mechanism can film you when your cell phone is actually off.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. So in other words, this is not science fiction. In other words, you can have a man and woman. Let's say one of them is maybe a politician that's kind of rising up in politics, and he's having an affair with some young man or some young woman. Europe, we have to throw both in. Anyway, but any way, he could be doing anything. Have a sheep in there, who knows, goat, whatever. But nice. The thing is, if his phone and the other, let's just say it's a person. Most sheep don't have phones. The other person, their phone's in the room too. Then they're together, and you could film, and then you could blackmail if you chose to. But doesn't Hunger Games? They're watching the contestants all the time. I mean,
they're watching them, and they have like sponsors. So if you kill a lot of people, or if you're good with like tactics and stuff, these sponsors can send you stuff. Like there's the girl Katniss, the main character, she gets burned on her leg, and a sponsor sends her like some cream that will heal it for her. So you have to like show yourself. You have to make yourself really known to these sponsors.
Okay, so this sounds like, did you see a parallel with modern society today in that sense?
What?
Well, a parallel. Like, if you got a situation where, let's say let's say with politics even, every politician has sponsors out there, they're bought off, in that sense. But this sounds like a society that not only is getting a thrill off the ultimate taboo, and that's having kids kill each other, but it also sounds material. It's like the ultimate in materialism.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm watching, I'm sorry, they have these big song contests in Europe, and the crowd that's watching as Caesar, what's his name, Caesar Flickerman, the guy, I say he's kind of cool there, right? the television moderator of the games. These people that are in the audience look a lot like these people you see in these in these kind of music things where they're dressed really weird and they're just really superficial, but they're very rich and very, I don't know how you would describe them. I mean, the guys.
They look kind of like transsexuals. I mean, no offense to them, but a lot of makeup, a lot of hair, and the most extravagant outfits you can find.
Yeah, so it's kind of very androgynous. The rich are very androgynous. It sounds like they're just trying to find something to amuse themselves, because in the city, it's a futuristic situation in which they have nanotechnology.
Mm-hmm.
They have probably, I mean, I don't know enough about the books. My daughter reads those. Probably life extension, perfect medical care, whereas the people in the countryside have nothing. They are like slaves. They're just good for resource.
Yeah, they're kind of like farmers. They just make their own food and share it with each other.
It sounds like, I've heard people say that sounds like what's called Agenda 21, the idea that you have these very advanced cities and then very primitive outskirts and so forth. But who knows? I mean, to me, though, it just sounds like the ultimate in a sponsored situation in which you've taken materialism to its ultimate end, and at the same time you pacify the people with giving them what they want. My only problem is that if you're going to pacify people, maybe you just set up a bunch of, Walmarts and give them cheap food and let them, it'd be like a modern America.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, don't starve them to death. Give them everything they want. They'll be very passive. I mean, you see, the only thing that would cause a lot of Americans, not all, but a lot of them, to actually protest would be if, someone banned remote controls or something.
It would kind of be like that movie, WALL-E.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of a dystopian cartoon. I mean, I didn't even think about that.
Mm.
You got this future where I don't even know, I want to know how they reproduce in that film. I mean, it must just be the robots extract the DNA and make new ones. For those who haven't seen WALL-E, it's like a world that becomes really polluted and people take off into space, but robots do all the work for them, so they get really fat and they just sit around and they ride around on these motorized hovercraft or something. And
yeah, because they can't walk. They've never walked.
Yeah, they're too fat to walk. Oh my gosh. And then you're thinking, oh wow, could that happen? Well, that should send us into the next movie here. That this surprises a lot of people when you include this in dystopian movies. But the movie that I would encourage, I wish they'd show this at every freaking high school in the Western world, and that's Idiocracy. Now, I don't know, have you seen Idiocracy, or do you remember it?
No, I've seen like commercials and quotes on Facebook, but I've never actually seen it.
Okay, here's the reason why you should watch this, Jasmine.
Mm-hmm.
Idiocracy is based on the idea that it's the idea that a lot of times the people who you think are like the best fit to raise kids that'll really like education are those who like education. Like a mom and dad who are both like really into learning and stuff. And I'm not going to get into so much of the genetics, but maybe, there's a genetic predisposition to learning and being able to remember things. But if you take a look at when people have babies, and it's getting more this way, that the more education, particularly women, but couples in general, get, the fewer kids they have. Whereas the less education, the more kids they have. Now, what happens after this is set and this guy gets put into a cryogenic experiment and they forget it's the U.S. military. They forget he's there. And,
oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah, and he gets woken up when there's a trash avalanche 500 years later. And he comes back and he's just like an average army guy. But then what's happened is the whole human race has devolved. Okay.
Devolved?
Yeah, I mean their intelligence level is really, really low. They're just like above the level of a chimpanzee. They still have all of these stores. I'm not going to name any because I don't know about copyright, all that kind of stuff. But there's all of these like stores and restaurants, but they've become like really weird things, like everyone speaks in like kind of a swearing, kind of like it's like if some of these reality shows they have, if all of these people that they have where they it's like a family that's really, really, really kind of like, I'm not going to say poor, but not maybe the brightest or something. And then, if you just thought about, well, maybe then they have kids who are not as bright as them, and then they have, and so on. And it's a really scary thing because this guy's like the smartest man in the world. He's like Einstein, but everyone else is just kind of looking at him with these glazed over eyes. And then you get into this idea that it seems like it's attacking consumerism because all they care about, everything's like, the federal government, like the FDA is bought by this sports drink. And then, of course, they require that everyone drinks this sports drink 24 hours a day, instead of water. They only use water for toilet. But they water their crops with this sports drink, and they're wondering why their crops are dying. And they're begging this guy to help them because they're going to starve to death soon. And it's atrocious, but it actually makes a huge point. I've had people, I've said, you should watch this, and they watch it, and someone that maybe said originally they were like going to have just maybe 1 or 2 kids are going, maybe I should have like 3 or 4 because I'm pretty smart. I don't want this to happen to the world. That sort of thing. Mm. It's an eye opener to a degree. So I encourage people to watch that, but it's the whole idea that as a society, we don't value learning, but we also don't seem to really value family anymore. And what would happen if the only people that have kids in the future are the ones that just accidentally have kids?
Like 16 and pregnant?
Yeah, they just kind of, wind up pregnant. It's like, oops. And whereas the other people are like, well, I don't want kids to interfere with my money. I can't go on trips. I can't do all these other things. So maybe we just postpone it. Yeah, I'm not ready to have kids. Maybe wait till 30. Oh, no, man, let's wait till 35. I've heard there's people that have kids when they're 40. Maybe we could, and then then they find out they can't have kids anymore. And it's just like, oops, well, whatever. But then the people that do have kids are the ones that do go, oops, like, honey, I'm pregnant again. There's a great scene at the beginning of Idiocracy. This guy is just making babies like crazy with all these women, and he's like really dumb. And the smart couple's sitting there, well, we can't have kids because the economy's not so good right now, and they die off because he has a heart. Whatever. But people should watch that. The next film I just got to throw in here because it's a classic, and I know probably most people listening have not seen this. Jasmine, you're 20-something. You've probably never seen this movie. It's called Soylent Green.
No, I've heard of it.
Okay, what have you heard? You heard anything interesting, or I'll just go in?
No, nothing interesting.
Okay. This movie is a classic because it presents the way people thought the world was going to be in 2012. Okay, 2 years ago. And it's a world in which global warming has just wiped out the earth. And people are crowded in these mega cities. And there's no food. I mean, it's like an Al Gore dystopian nightmare. By the way, Al Gore, do you know what Al Gore was known for back in the 80s? What he was saying, like, oh my gosh, we got to be really worried about it. Him and his wife, it wasn't global warming. You know what it was?
I don't know, weed?
No. It was heavy metal music.
Really?
Yeah. There was a classic exchange between this guy called Twisted Sister and Al Gore during these congressional hearings on, and they just thought this Twisted Sister guy, he had the ruffled hair and, crazy, 80s look. And they thought he was just going to be this dork that was going to come in and they were just going to eat him alive, and he ate them alive. And then he makes a joke about Tipper Gore maybe being the reason why she saw sadomasochism in his music was because she was looking for it. Al was like kind of upset about that. But anyway, that's beside the point. I just wanted people to be aware of that. Just look up rock music / Tipper and Al Gore. But anyway, this world is just horrible that they presented for 2012. It's like the global warming to the max, and everyone's dying, and there's food riots, and there's this corporation that controls what's called Soylent Green. It's like a protein wafer, and everyone wants it because it'll supply your nutritional needs. So it's like it's a wafer, you eat it, you're full. And then, but there's something about the wafer that, not as a spoiler, of course, anyone that, I'm just saying you should watch it if you haven't seen it. Essentially, what do you do with old people in such a society where, you got this overpopulation that was predicted in those days? Nowadays.
Oh my God, ew.
Yeah!
No.
You make Granny into crackers. And at the end, it's just really interesting you kind of get the feel that this is going to happen when Charlton Heston's kind of like, he discovers what they make it out of, and he's like, but the thing is that, most people don't realize in the 1970s that there was people that were predicting things like, India won't exist because it'll be wiped out. And look at, I think they're a faster growing economy than China now, and half of them are middle class, and but there was this idea that we're all going to die off, this time period, and in reality, what is it? I don't think there's any countries in Europe besides maybe Albania that actually have a positive birth rate. They're shrinking. They're dying out. But, oh well. That was what people thought.
Well,
you got to watch the movie, Jasmine.
I will.
Yeah, you'll find it amusing.
And gross.
They don't go into like a lot of detail. You don't actually see the person made into Soylent Green. You just know. That was the movies in those days. You didn't show all the gore that you would nowadays. It's not like the Human Centipede or something like that.
Ew.
Anyway,
okay.
Yeah, we won't talk about that because
movie.
that's not actually that's not a dystopian movie. That's just weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, but with RoboCop, I'd like to just really say one thing, and people should take a look. Here's one thing I would like people to do is type in DARPA, weapons, and robots. Now, the thing is, the society, the world, I read something the scientist was saying. You'll love this one, Jasmine. This scientist was saying that in about 20 years, they'll even replace prostitutes with robots.
Well, that's not fun.
Well, I don't know. Did you know in Japan there's a lot of guys that they give up on girls and they actually have these digital girlfriends on their cell phones? They're like manga girls and they can talk to them and they can pretend like they're like back in that 40-year-old guys can pretend like they're back in high school and this is their high school girlfriend.
That's pathetic. Very sad.
And you can see what's happened to their birth rate. It's like, there's communities in Japan where there's hospitals and no babies are born. I mean, whole cities. We're not talking about a little community like, a gas station and 5 houses. We're talking about communities like 30, 40, 50,000 people, and there's no babies being born.
Have the government started paying them to have kids like in Russia yet?
I think they've tried, but it's not really working so well. The problem that you have, and they found this in countries like France, for instance, and even Scandinavia, is that it's more cost effective to get someone who's already had a kid already to get more kids than it is to persuade a woman and man that don't want kids to want kids. So in other words, it's easier to get a woman who has 2 kids to have 3 than it is to have a woman who has no kids to suddenly decide, I need to have babies. So if like in Scandinavia or the United States, you have a lot of women who just don't have any kids, but then you have a lot of women who have like 2 and 3 kids. So it sort of averages in, but still is way below replacement because there's too many women who don't have any kids. But in Japan, you have a situation where many women just don't have any kids at all. And so it's not working. But a lot of it's going to get worse because they're trying to create robots to take care of their old people.
Okay.
You work with old people, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
The Japanese are doing their best to replace you with a robot.
Why?
Because there's not enough young people over there that want to take a job because that's like an entry level type job. Okay, I'm in college, I'm in high school, I want to have a job. Okay, I'll work with the old people in the rest home. Problem is that there's not enough young people to want to do that. So no one's there to take care of all the old people, and a lot of them don't have kids. So,
but see, there's a difference between young people. There's the stupid young people and the smarter young people. The stupid ones go into McDonald's and Burger King and whatever. They're like, oh, gotta get a job. But the smarter ones get jobs at, working with old people or picking up people's garbage, because that's the job where you get most paid, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
so, think about that.
Yeah. Well, but the problem is if there's not enough people at all doing the work, and you still have old people still needing care, assisted living, and people live a long time in Japan. They take good care of themselves. I mean, it's the highest lifespan on earth. They don't want immigration. They don't want to mess with their culture. They want to keep it Japanese. So their solution is putting a lot of money into developing robots who will do this. And then when they have those robots, the first thing, once you get robots that look like, feel like, and talk like human beings, what the next step is.
Why not just turn all the old people to Soylent Greens?
Probably not very popular. It's although there's probably some people out there like I was going to name some people in the U.S. government that would probably do it, but no, I think what you're going to have is we're going to see more mechanization. I read somewhere in the next 20 years, half of the jobs will be replaced with mechanization, much of that robots. And the robots will get better and better and better. And if we go by what like Ray, have you ever seen the Transcendent Man video? Where Ray Kurzweil's talking about downloading himself into a machine before he dies.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a movie about that.
Yeah. Do you remember that the idea that you can have like robots created that would then replace your body?
Yeah.
Okay. See my point?
That's awful. Yeah, but that's awful.
Yeah, but I think this is where we're heading. I think these kinds of I didn't list Terminator or anything like that, but I think these kinds of things about Blade Runner, for instance, and RoboCop, they deal with this kind of theme that, for instance, in RoboCop, is he human? He's essentially just a brain, really, inside a robot. Mm-hmm. But we're talking in the future, maybe 30 years from now, where, heck, maybe you want a new body, have your brain taken out. I interviewed someone the other day, and he was a transhumanist, and I asked him, well, how would you feel if your wife had her brain taken out and put inside a synthetic body? Looks like, feels like her, but the only part of her that's organic is her brain. He even said, well, it'd be really weird, but he thought that's going to come. Would you do it if you're sitting there old and gray and you're like some of those people you work with? You could have a brand new body, looks just like you do now?
No, I just die.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather die.
There's people out there that wouldn't, but I think that the whole Blade Runner thing really gets into that concept of humanity and the machine.
I've never seen that movie, actually.
You just said you what? Oh, not Blade.
No, I thought you meant
RoboCop. I'm the one that made the mistake. Blade Runner deals with that too, but it's slightly different. It's the idea that we can use genetic manipulation to create a class of essentially slaves. Slave soldiers, slave this or that. And in the movie, some of the higher ones, the really advanced ones, gain a sense of themselves. And they rebel. And it's a really nasty world. Most people have left and gone to another planet. But there's a kind of a frontier / sci-fi, kind of Japanese style sci-fi society left. And you deal with that whole thing too, that transhumanist thing. I mean, if I create a artificial human, are they human? If they think and feel and actually have self-awareness, what do you think?
No, because they weren't really. Would they have a childhood? No.
No.
No. Well, then that doesn't make them human.
Yeah, I mean that's true. You're designing them. Here's a question for you. This is a weird question, and this Blade Runner thing can go into this as well.
Okay.
What if you had a situation in which a woman goes in to the doctor and the doctor says they now have artificial sperm.
Mm-hmm.
They're not human. I mean, they're designed in the lab. No genetic flaws whatsoever. But they didn't come from a man. They're artificial. Mm-hmm. And offered the woman a chance to become pregnant with this artificial sperm. And guarantees that the baby's going to be born nice, soft, cuddly. It's just not going to have a father. Half of its DNA will have been made in a lab, and half the DNA would be, whether people believe in evolution or God or whatever, that got that way. Would that be a human?
No.
Okay.
I'm a very old-fashioned girl, even though I'm only 20-something.
Okay, so you're not into the idea of having your brain taken out or having a baby with something created in a lab?
Nope.
You think there are people out there that would?
Absolutely. Unfortunately.
Has these kinds of weird topics about transhumanism and all this weird way of making children and stuff like that, have you ever had a discussion with people that said they would do this kind of thing?
Well,
do you know?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there was this one girl who said that, she wanted like the perfect body. She's been watching these Hollywood Wives and magazines and whatnot, and she was like, surgery is so expensive and working out takes a long time, but if I only had that like opportunity to go to a lab, get my body fixed and stay that way forever, I totally would, even though I would have to like sell my soul.
Ooh, wow.
That was just, I was like, why? Why would you do that? It's just like, so that I could be perfect forever, which totally shows how up this world really is. Seriously.
Well, I just think it's weird when you'll talk to someone and they'll actually, they'll make predictions for the future. And I'm talking about people I've talked to, on the show, leading transhumanists, not just some guy that has a blog, but I mean, people that are out there, being interviewed and on news shows and subjects of documentaries and things like that. And when they say that, yeah, in the future, you may not like the way your arms are or legs or you want more strength, you'll just go in and they'll just be cut off and replaced with synthetic ones that look and feel like human, but they won't really be human. And it's just like a matter of fact. I don't know. I mean, I could see if I got into a car wreck and I lost my leg. Of course, yes, I would want to have one of these artificial legs. But would I just kind of walk into a doctor's office and say, could you please replace my legs with the new version?
But that's like another thing. If you lose a limb, you can always, even now, go get a prosthetic one.
Mm-hmm.
So that wouldn't be that much different from getting a whole new one.
Mm-hmm. But
I'm talking about altering a whole body or just keeping it, preserving it like a pickle for the rest of your life. That's just not right.
Yeah, but again, when Blade Runner came out, I remember I didn't want to go see it. A friend of mine said, "Look, come on, we'll go see it. I'll pay your ticket. Come on." He was just bored. So I was like, I was in college, so I was like, okay, I'll go see it. Fine. And when I watched it at first, I didn't really enjoy it that much. I was expecting something different. And then later I watched it and I was like, yeah, this is actually an awesome movie. But it was making these kinds of predictions, the creation of human beings in labs and stuff. And now we're there. I mean, we could do a lot of this stuff. And in 20 years from now, I'm sure we'll be able to do everything that's in actually the movie. It would be like matter of fact. And that's why I think these dystopian films, I think a lot of times the directors or the writers actually don't get their ideas just out of their head. They actually see this stuff and then they just extend it into the future.
You know what? That's just like a part of life. Not to brag, but I love my face. Mm-hmm. And wrinkles, that just comes naturally. It means that you've lived a healthy and happy life.
Yeah.
And having that kind of plastic face, not being able to laugh or smile at your grandkids, I mean, that's just as creepy as like a clown.
Yeah, or you could get an artificial face put on.
Well, what? That's like a scary movie. God.
Well, it sounds like a scary movie, but we're getting that technology. I mean, you can clone skin in a lab. Why not? I mean, you see what I'm saying? It's coming.
Yeah, I know it's coming, but I hope I'll be dead before it's here.
Yeah, then Ray Kurzweil might just download your brain into a computer.
Oh,
that begs the question, though. Who controls the computer program? I mean, can you imagine? You get downloaded into a computer, and then you get someone that's really sadistic deciding to, I don't know. I know you have a fear of spiders, and they stick in a video, system, and it's like eternity in living in Spider World or something.
Okay, great.
I don't think it's impossible.
No, it's not, but...
Okay, we got to rush along here because we just got a couple, a little bit of time left. But Equilibrium, 1984. 1984, Matrix and Equilibrium are all kind of overlapping. But again, Matrix goes into that idea that what is our reality? I mean, Jasmine, have you ever thought about the idea that maybe this isn't reality? You're on a spaceship and you're just being fed all of this. You don't really exist in this world.
Actually have. While sitting on buses, I usually tend to zone out and just think, what if I really am not here?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very weird feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's always that idea that, I mean, I've thought about this. If we're able to do these things that are being predicted, mm-hmm. we can, eventually be able just to sit back. I've heard predictions that 20 years from now, we're not even going to need, a laptop is going to look really primitive because we'll be directly wired into the internet.
Mm.
And if you're directly wired into the internet, why wouldn't you be able just to sit back, relax, maybe put a headset on or close your eyes and suddenly, you're in Fiji, walking on the beach. That's where you're at. I mean, you sense it. You feel the breeze on your skin. You could be doing anything. You'd be riding an elephant.
Yeah, but that would get us into that whole WALL-E world,
mm-hmm.
where we just sit around and get fat and experience things we don't actually experience.
Yeah. I think you're right, actually. I mean, I think people would get so addicted to it. Who'd want to be in? Look at nowadays. Have you noticed how people have conversations? 6 people sitting at a table and they just are playing with their iPhones?
Yeah, I've seen it.
I mean, what would happen if we had, I seriously think people would actually go berserk if we had a solar, there's a term for it, but a solar flare. And these things happen. I mean, they happen. There was one that hit the earth like in the 1850s and knocked out every telegraph in the world. And if it hit nowadays, it would knock out all the communication satellites, which would then knock out every single computer and cell phone. People wouldn't have Facebook. They wouldn't.
Oh my God! Think about that. We had to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Terrible.
But so I guess we're sort of living in a matrix now. Kind of a
Maybe.
weird concept. But anyway, I'd want people to actually check in to 1984, which I think is so primitive. I mean, but the one that was put out in 1984, that movie with Richard Burton, it is so depressing, but it still catches this idea of what it would be like in a society where everything's controlled. I mean, but nowadays, hey, if you can be watched through your computer and people seem to be perfectly okay with it. I don't care what they see I go to. I mean, they know which computer they know every website you go to. I mean, ultimately. I mean, and they're okay with it. A lot of people are okay. Equilibrium. I have to say this, though. You saw Equilibrium.
Yeah.
I saw that when it first came out. It's with Christian Bale. It's kind of like 1984 with a little bit of Matrix with the martial arts stuff.
Yeah.
But it shows blimps going around and drones monitoring people. Everyone's supposed to take this medicine that will erase their emotional state. And the only people that are actually allowed to have feelings are the elite. I mean, take a look at America. Have you ever seen what they do in America now? I mean, what is it? Like half the people in America are on some sort of drug?
Yeah, you go to your psychologist and they just prescribe whatever.
Yeah, I mean, a kid's daydreaming in class. Well, you're ADHD. You need a Ritalin. You're not talking to kids in class. You must be bipolar.
Yeah.
Giving drugs like crazy. Housewife's a little bit depressed. Watches too much TV and thinks, oh, why can't I be like the Hollywood whatever? What'd you call it? The Housewives of
The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Yeah, and people watch this and they actually believe that's what they should be like, and then they're like they're looking at their own house, which could fit into their closet or something.
Yeah.
And they're feeling depressed over it, and then it's like, what? No wonder your people are feeling bad and going to the psychiatrist or psychologist. And, what's wrong with me? Well, you're comparing yourself to people that, in some ways, don't even exist. I mean, I don't think there's any of these magazine covers of, the glamour type stuff, that's, fashion type stuff. It's all Photoshop. I mean, those women don't exist.
Yeah. It is true. It's a shame too that people think that they actually exist and that you have to look like it. It's not an ideal for me, but I know a lot of people who take it really seriously to look like that.
But what is it? And then we're going into that last movie here, which I know you've not seen. And it's been a long time since I've seen it. And the one called They Live. It's actually become somewhat of a cult classic, especially in recent years with the internet. But first of all, before I go into that, how does it make you feel when you see so many people consumed over consumerism?
Whatever. It's their choice. You just learn from your mistakes.
But are they learning?
No. Not now, but maybe later when they look back and they see all that crap they have at home. They don't need it.
Well, the plot of They Live, you might actually want to watch it. I don't know. It's an 80s movie. But in the plot, there's, I guess, like these aliens that come down and take over the earth. But they take over all of the, the networks and the corporations and the government. They put their people in. And they look like regular people, and they create this society that's totally based on consumerism and buy this so you'll be happy and stuff. But this guy happens upon some special sunglasses, and when he puts them on, you may have seen these memes. He puts them on, and all of a sudden he sees these faces that look like skulls, living skull-like creatures.
Okay.
And then he looks around, and where there might be a sign saying, have a nice day, it says, buy this product, all these signs everywhere. And he sees it. He sees that everything is an illusion. And of course he tries to tell people, and they're like, oh, you're crazy, and everything. So essentially it winds up that he and this other guy, they share the sunglasses so they can take on these aliens. But it's a society that's been created for humans, and it's feeding off of them and using them like parasites.
Well, that's kind of like today.
Yeah. If we want to call the elite parasites, I mean, they're I don't know. To me, these movies, it's scary because they cease to be just entertainment if you watch these things. They actually become this, really major, like, everyone watch out. This is what's coming. Much of it's already here. 1984, that's so old-fashioned. I mean, if you can listen to people through their TV sets, or if you stand underneath a power line, you can monitor a person's conversation. Did you know that?
Yeah.
That's freaky.
Yeah, it is.
Your appliances in your kitchen can be spying on you. I mean, that is really, really freaky. I didn't believe that when I first heard about it. And I looked it up. My gosh.
Really?
It's true.
Kitchen appliances?
Through vibration.
What?
Yeah. If you're talking, then you're have you ever heard the thing, we gotta hurry there, but have you ever heard the thing where they ask you that you should unplug appliances because they're still using energy?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if they're still using energy, that means there's still a conduit being taken. Like if you're, I know it sounds crazy, but from what I understand, let's say your oven's on, and it's turned off, but it's still plugged into the electrical system, and there's still energy flowing through your oven. Very little, but it's still enough that they say if you unplug your appliances, you save money. Those currents can be interpreted, translated.
That is so weird.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, I mean, even Edward Snowden in his last interview said that that's pretty. You'd have to be kind of targeted. They're not watching everything that everyone does. But if you suddenly are someone that they want, you become a person of interest. They've got it. They could even watch. You said something. I got to hurry here, but they can watch like when you're writing something on the internet, and they can take note of where you stop or where you erase something or something like that, and they can set up a psychometric profile. I just thought that was really fascinating. Anyway, though, we have come to our limit. Okay, I'm sorry. Jasmine, I feel like I kind of run over you here because I get all excited about all this stuff. Like, this is really interesting, but next time I won't be so aggressive.
Oh, well, it's understandable.
Okay. Anyway, thank you for taking part. And everyone out there, look over the movies we talked about. Clockwork Orange, 1984, Blade Runner, They Live, Matrix, Hunger Games, RoboCop. Maybe watch either, the 80s version or the new one. Who knows? Idiocracy, Equilibrium, Soylent Green. And just when you watch them, it gets eerie when you actually think about what they're really saying. That's really scary.
Matrix.
Yeah. So anyway, well, thank you, Jasmine. And thank you, listening audience, for tuning in. And hope you're back next week for another episode of Unlock the Door Radio.
For more news, visit youtube.com/pigmind5.
This is Ozzy Skateboard.